We are following breaking news from D.C. President Trump announcing that the U.S. has launched airstrikes in Nigeria. This is the post from President Trump on Truth Social just a few minutes ago. He said, "Tonight, at my direction as Commander-in-Chief, the United States launched a powerful and deadly strike against ISIS terrorist scum in northwest Nigeria, who have been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for many years and even centuries."
Listen, something happened on Christmas Day that we absolutely need to discuss because it exposes everything dangerous about how Trump operates and how he's fundamentally changing America's role in the world. While you were opening presents with your family,
I have previously warned these terrorists that if they did not stop the slaughtering of Christians, there would be hell to pay. And tonight, there was. The Department of War executed numerous perfect strikes, as only the United States is capable of doing. Under my leadership, our country will not allow radical Islamic terrorism to prosper. May God bless our military, and Merry Christmas to all, including the dead terrorists, of which there will be many more if their slaughter of Christians continues.
While most Americans were focused on the holiday, Donald Trump ordered military strikes in Nigeria and announced it on Truth Social like he was posting about his golf game, not through proper channels, not with detailed briefings, just a social media blast celebrating dead terrorists on Christmas. And if that doesn't disturb you, if that doesn't set off alarm bells about where this presidency is heading,
that was from President Trump. And we also have a reaction to that from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He said the president was clear last month the killing of innocent Christians in Nigeria and elsewhere must end. The Department of War is always ready, so ISIS found out tonight on Christmas. More to come. Grateful for Nigerian government support and cooperation. Merry Christmas.
Then you're not paying close enough attention to what's actually happening. Here's what went down. Trump posted on Truth Social that at his direction as Commander-in-Chief, the United States launched what he called powerful and deadly strikes against ISIS terrorist scum in northwest Nigeria. Those are his words, terrorist scum. He claimed these groups have been targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians at levels not seen for many years and even centuries. He said he'd previously warned these terrorists that if they didn't stop slaughtering Christians, there would be hell to pay. And according to Trump, tonight there was hell to pay because what he's now calling the Department of War executed numerous perfect strikes that only America is capable of doing under his leadership. Let's pause right there because we need to unpack what's actually being revealed in that statement. First off, Trump is renaming the Pentagon the Department of War. That's not an accident. That's not a slip. That's ideological messaging. We deliberately changed the name from War Department to Department of Defense back in 1947, specifically to emphasize that American military power exists for defensive purposes, not for aggressive warfare. Trump is intentionally reverting to the old name because he wants to signal a more militaristic, aggressive approach to American power. He wants us understood as war makers, not defenders. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Second, notice how everything is framed around Trump personally. My direction, my leadership, perfect strikes. This isn't about American interests or protecting civilians or upholding international law. This is about Trump's power, Trump's decisions, Trump's perfect execution. That's how authoritarians talk about military action. Democratic leaders frame these decisions in terms of national security, coalition building, protecting American values. Trump frames it as personal power projection. Look what I can do. Look how perfectly I execute military strikes. That should terrify anyone who understands how dangerous unchecked executive power becomes. Now let's talk about the religious framing, because this is where things get really disturbing. Trump explicitly positioned these strikes as defending Christians against Islamic terrorism. He's casting American military intervention in explicitly religious terms. He's making this about protecting one faith from another faith. And he concluded his post by saying, "Merry Christmas to all," including the dead terrorists, of which there will be many more if their slaughter of Christians continues. He's celebrating killing people on Christmas. He's treating human deaths as a holiday gift to his supporters. That's not how leaders who understand the gravity of taking life operate. That's someone who views violence as entertainment and political messaging. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth immediately backed Trump up, also using the Department of War terminology and saying ISIS found out tonight on Christmas. So this isn't just Trump going rogue. This is coordinated messaging from the top of the defense establishment embracing more aggressive militaristic language about American power. And they deliberately chose Christmas for this announcement. They want the religious symbolism. They want Trump positioned as a warrior defending Christianity on the holiest day of the Christian calendar. That plays directly to his evangelical base, and it's dangerous as hell because it frames military action in religious warfare terms that extremists on all sides use to justify violence. Now, here's what we actually know from verified reporting. U.S. Africa Command conducted strikes in Sokoto State in northwestern Nigeria, which borders Niger. AFRICOM's initial assessment is that multiple ISIS terrorists were killed in ISIS camps. The Nigerian foreign minister confirmed he spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio before the strike, and that Nigerian President Bola Tinubu gave the go-ahead. So there was coordination with Nigerian authorities, which Trump's post completely omitted. He made it sound like he unilaterally decided to bomb Nigeria because he's defending Christians. The reality is, this was apparently done in cooperation with the Nigerian government addressing terrorist groups that threaten their country. Security analysts believe the actual target may have been Lakurawa, a lesser-known but increasingly deadly group that's been operating in northwestern states and was designated a terrorist organization by Nigerian authorities back in January. This group has been attacking remote communities and security forces regardless of religion, which brings us to a critical point that Trump's framing completely obscures. Nigeria is dealing with complex security problems driven by multiple factors, including religiously motivated attacks, but also communal and ethnic tensions, disputes between farmers and herders over resources, and various armed groups operating across the region. Both Christians and Muslims in Nigeria, the two main religious groups in a country of over 230 million people, have been victims of attacks by radical Islamists, according to experts and analysts. Trump's binary framing of this as attacks targeting Christians doesn't resonate with reality on the ground, according to security analysts. One expert pointed out that in a country largely divided politically and religiously, Trump's characterization has serious implications for how people view the conflict and risks opening fault lines of division that already exist. But Trump doesn't care about that complexity. He's been focused for months on positioning himself as defender of Christians in Nigeria. Back in November, he called on his defense secretary to prepare for possible action and warned the U.S. would enter Nigeria guns blazing to protect the Christian population. He designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act, claiming Christianity faces an existential threat there. This has been an animating issue for American conservatives for years, with Trump allies like Ted Cruz calling for U.S. intervention and claiming Nigeria's government isn't doing enough to prevent attacks on Christians. So Trump has been building toward this moment, creating a narrative that positions him as the strong leader willing to use military force to protect persecuted Christians worldwide. And on Christmas Day, he got to execute that narrative with actual military strikes announced in the most theatrical way possible. Never mind that the situation on the ground is far more complicated than Trump presents it. Never mind that Muslims are also being killed by these same terrorist groups. Never mind that Nigerian authorities are actively fighting these threats, and that's why they coordinated with the U.S. on these strikes. Trump reduces everything to a simple story where he's the hero defending Christians against Islamic terrorists, and that simplification serves his political interests even as it distorts reality and potentially inflames religious tensions. Now let's talk about what we don't know, because the gaps in information are as revealing as what Trump did say. We don't know exactly what was struck. We don't know how many people were killed. We don't know if there were civilian casualties. We don't know what specific intelligence justified these particular strikes at this particular moment. We don't know what legal framework Trump is claiming authorizes this action beyond coordination with Nigerian authorities. All we have is Trump declaring he ordered perfect strikes and killed terrorists. No accountability mechanisms, no transparency about targeting or results, no details that would allow independent verification or oversight. Just take Trump's word that everything went perfectly. That's authoritarian governance. Democratic leaders don't announce military action as personal achievements on social media. They provide briefings. They offer legal justifications. They submit to congressional oversight. They answer questions about intelligence, targeting, results, and legal authority. Trump is normalizing the idea that the president can unilaterally order strikes anywhere in the world based on his personal judgment, and the only information the public gets is whatever he decides to tell them in a social media post. And here's what really should concern everyone. Trump campaigned as someone who would limit U.S. military intervention abroad. He positioned himself as the candidate who would end endless wars and focus on America first. But since returning to power, he's ordered strikes on Iran's nuclear program and now strikes in Nigeria. He's overseen massive military buildup around Venezuela with threats of strikes there too. The peacemaker rhetoric was always bullshit. What Trump actually wants is unilateral executive power to use military force however and wherever he wants without constraint or oversight. The timing of this announcement matters too. Christmas Day, when Congress is in recess and can't immediately demand hearings or explanations, when most Americans are with family not paying attention to news, when it's easiest for Trump to act without scrutiny or pushback, just like announcing the discovery of 1 million more Epstein documents on Christmas was deliberate. Trump and his team consistently use holidays to make major moves they know will be controversial, while public attention is at its lowest. That's not coincidence, that's strategy. The Nigerian foreign minister told CNN that Nigeria isn't going to dwell forensically on what Trump has or hasn't said. Their focus is fighting terrorism and protecting all Nigerians regardless of religion. That diplomatic response speaks volumes. Nigerian authorities are trying to manage Trump's inflammatory rhetoric while still cooperating on legitimate security operations. They understand that Trump's framing creates problems for them domestically and regionally, even as his military support provides tactical benefits against terrorist groups. Nigerian President Tinubu posted a Christmas message the day before these strikes, emphasizing his commitment to religious freedom and protecting Christians, Muslims, and all Nigerians from violence. He called for peace among individuals of differing religious beliefs. That's responsible leadership, acknowledging complex realities. Compare that to Trump celebrating dead terrorists on Christmas and threatening many more deaths if slaughter of Christians continues. One leader is trying to unite his country across religious lines. The other is explicitly framing military intervention in terms of one religion against another. This is how Trump operates. He takes complex situations with multiple factors and reduces them to simple narratives that serve his political interests. He ignores context and nuance in favor of dramatic framing that positions him as strong, decisive leader. He uses military force as political messaging tool to energize his base. And he does it all with minimal transparency or accountability because he believes presidential power should be essentially unchecked when it comes to using American military might. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war specifically to prevent presidents from unilaterally committing America to military conflicts based solely on their judgment. The War Powers Resolution requires notification within 48 hours and limits extended military action without congressional authorization. These constraints exist because the founders understood how dangerous unchecked executive war powers become. Trump is systematically undermining those constraints by normalizing unilateral strikes announced on social media with religious warfare framing and zero meaningful oversight. And most of the media will let this slide. There'll be some coverage, some criticism from Democrats, some defense from Republicans. But by the time people are paying attention again after the holiday, Trump will have moved to the next outrage. This will become just another norm he destroyed that we all got used to. Another expansion of unchecked presidential power that future presidents will inherit and potentially abuse. Another step toward authoritarian governance that happens without sustained resistance because everyone's too exhausted or too partisan to demand accountability. So I'm telling you right now while it's fresh, this matters. This is dangerous. These strikes may have been justified based on legitimate intelligence about terrorist threats. The coordination with Nigerian authorities suggests this wasn't purely Trump going rogue, but the way Trump announced it, the framing he used, the religious warfare narrative he constructed, the celebration of deaths on Christmas, the renaming of the Pentagon as Department of War, all of that reveals an approach to presidential power and military force that's fundamentally incompatible with democratic governance and constitutional constraints. If we don't push back hard, if we don't demand transparency and congressional oversight and legal justification for military strikes, if we don't reject the framing of American military intervention in explicitly religious terms, Trump is going to keep escalating. He's testing how far he can go. He's seeing what he can get away with. And every time he expands executive power without consequences, he pushes the boundary further for next time. That's what authoritarians do. They accumulate power gradually through repeated boundary violations that each seem possibly justifiable in isolation, but collectively represent fundamental transformation of how government operates. Trump is transforming the presidency into something the founders would recognize as monarchical or dictatorial. Unchecked power to make life and death decisions, military force as personal prerogative, religious warfare framing, announcement by social media, zero meaningful accountability. That's not American democracy. That's something much more dangerous. And it's happening right now while most people aren't even paying attention because it's Christmas.